We are live. Fantastic. With that out of the way, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Burnin Rubber, the socially distanced edition for May 15th, 2020. We hope that everybody had an enjoyable Mother's Day weekend this past weekend, and that everyone has done well on their finals at the University of Missouri, considering us Mizzou students. My name is Sterling Siemens. I'm joined by my regular co-hosts Hal Estep and Justin Farmer, excuse me. It's been a long day, so sorry about that butcher there. But fellas, how's the week been? The semester's finally over. Any thoughts?
Stressful for 4 days and then suddenly no stress at all.
I feel the same exact way. Congrats everybody for making it past this semester. We somehow did it. I'm not sure how, but we all did it, and we'll be moving on up a year. And first off, congratulations to all the seniors today too.
Absolutely. There are several, excuse me, there are a lot of seniors at the University of Missouri who are graduating this weekend. Of course, this weekend was supposed to be a commencement weekend on campus at Mizzou. However, due to the ongoing pandemic, things were changed a little bit, but they still held virtual graduation ceremonies remotely via Zoom. So congrats to all of the graduates from the University of Missouri. We will recognize a select few of these seniors and graduates at the end of today's show, but there is a lot to talk about. It's 8 o'clock Central Time right now, and I can't tell you how much there is to talk about. This is probably the most stacked show we've had ever in this program.
This is 2 pages.
Yeah, 2 pages.
2 pages.
2 pages worth of an agenda. So let's dive right in, shall we? So we'll start with the recap of the iRacing NASCAR event at North Wilkesboro Speedway. Yes, the same North Wilkesboro Speedway. And it was a virtual event, so it's not the real thing, but it's great to have racing back in some capacity for North Wilkesboro Speedway. Denny Hamlin won the season opener for the iRacing NASCAR Invitational at Homestead in a wild finish, and he wins the finale of NASCAR iRacing in a wild finish as well on a bump and run. So Denny Hamlin proves victorious. We'll try to look at the results here, but it was Denny Hamlin getting his second win of the iRacing Pro Invitational. I guess we'll start with this one thing. For North Wilkesboro, this was great exposure for that track, especially considering they haven't had a NASCAR Cup race at least, since 1996, and how that track has been basically dormant over in North Wilkesboro, North Carolina for the last 2.5 decades. So with the exposure that they got from this race, iRacing even made the announcement that the track was going to be made available to those participating in the iRacing server much earlier than expected. In fact, it was made available on Monday. So with the race on Saturday, how does this bode for the future of North Wilkesboro? I'll start on this conversation with Hal Estep.
I think it bodes pretty well. I want to be really optimistic about it. We've seen this song and dance before with North Wilkesboro, but never to the extent to work out this publicity by being the iRacing Pro Invitational finale. A lot of people are rooting for the track, and I think everyone's always wanted to see it come back, but it's been a question of how much would NASCAR be willing to invest. And I think with how successful this last race was, I think they might finally get real serious about putting it back into contention to be a track on the schedule.
Justin Palmer, your take on North Wilkesboro.
I mean, first off, it was a great race. Let's get that out of the way. I think this was probably the best race we've had on the iRacing circuit in terms of the Cup races. It's because everybody in that field, this was not their first time in the iRacing circuit. Everybody was it was clean, it was fun, and it was everything you wanted out of an iRacing event. And except for maybe Danny Hamlin winning, but that's a different story. Hey, I know a lot of people wanted to see the Watermelon Man get his first victory, but wasn't able to come up with it and on the bump and run. And but you look at it two ways. Hey, so you look at firstly, you look at it from it was fun, it was entertaining. This was everything you wanted with a modern earn car, and it lived up to the expectation of that track. You have the fun uphills and you have the fun downhill. Oh, it's a different and unique 0.625 mile racetrack, like that fans have been wanting for years. However, I think another statistic that we kind of overlooked was the ratings. And surprisingly, this was the lowest rated race in terms of ratings out of every single iRacing event that NASCAR ran during this time. So, that kind of is a little bit of a negative. And that you look and say, hey, we should have seen a lot more people getting excited for this race. And that can mean one or two things. That can mean either A, there's not enough of the older generation to express interest in North Wilkesboro anymore, or B, the newer kind of generation has kind of taken over and wasn't interested in the race to begin with. So, and you also didn't help that you had a smaller field. Obviously, you were missing a couple of names like Brad Keselowski, Kurt Busch, which I know those two were not in the race. So you kind of take the positives and the negatives. I'm really hopeful that this is the thing that gets North Wilkesboro, at least he saves the racetrack. Heck, I'm not expecting a full cup date, but it's a little concerning with the final results, I think, with the ratings.
Well, concerning the ratings, I think that one of the factors that may have contributed to this is that, for one thing, the race was on Saturday, whereas all of the other iRacing events that NASCAR's had, they've been on Sunday afternoons. Like for a Saturday, and this wasn't in prime time either. This was in a Saturday afternoon. So probably a lot of fans thought that it was going to be on Sunday afternoon, as the races usually have been in the past, or at the very least on a Saturday, they would move it to a Saturday night, and that was not the case. So obviously that didn't help, but I think there were some other factors, including like I heard online that some local TV stations were airing other things other than the race at North Wilkesboro, which is understandable. But at the same time, there is the point that needs to be made about do the fans actually care about these old tracks coming back? The example that I harken back to is Rockingham when it came back to the Truck Series in 2012, 2013. Because a lot of fans pushed for Rockingham to get back on the schedule once it lost its Cup date in 2004. Or at least 2004 was the last year they held a Cup race. Then it went 7 years without holding a NASCAR race. They got ARCA and I think K&N Pro Series races back in 2009, I want to say. But the announcement came in late 2011 that starting the next year in 2012 that the Truck Series was going to be racing there at The Rock. And there was a lot of great buzz around it. Fans were excited. They're all happy. And like, yeah, racing's back at The Rock. And then the race happens and like half the stands are full. And then the year after it was worse. The turnout was worse. And I mean, it's not like I'm not trying to knock on the local fans there, but in a sense, I do feel like there was a lack of star power that may have contributed to the low attendance at Rockingham. And ironically, low attendance was a reason cited for why the Cup Series stopped going there. But that aside, it just seems like the locals and fans all around, they push for these tracks to come back. And then the day comes, like there was the one time when Rockingham came back and and the fans didn't turn out. And the track was gone after 2 years off the schedule, although that was mostly due to financial troubles that Andy Hillenberg had in his ownership of the track. And the track hasn't had a date for any racing series, I think, since then. So it's important to get the fans on their side. So for North Wilkesboro, I mean, I don't know. I feel like if they do get a race back, any race, like any Cup, Xfinity, truck race, if they get any of those series back, they're going to have to do something around the track, like develop stuff around it. I mean, I'd say Kansas Speedway is a really good example of this, because the Speedway, once it was built out in the middle of nowhere in KCK. And I've been to Kansas Speedway numerous times. It's my home track. But going to Kansas Speedway, everything that you see there, the Legends Outlet Mall, Children's Mercy Park, home of Sporting KC in Major League Soccer, Community America Ballpark, which the Kansas City T-Bones used for minor league baseball action, even the Hollywood Casino out in Turn 2. That was stuff that was developed around the Speedway. And those amenities are stuff that people can use, race fans who, even corporate people who might not be the most passionate about racing, they'll go to a race because of all the development around the area, around the track. North Wilkesboro might have to do something similar to that, but is there a chance that they can realistically do that considering their area? I'll start with Justin on this one.
I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure. And you mentioned the Rockingham race, Ace, and I'll admit there was, and that does bring up a big concern about Rockingham. You look at who was involved during those two races. You mentioned in Star Power, that race had a ton of star power in the in those Truck Series races. I mean, you look at the 2012 results, you have Casey Kane in that race, you have Ty Dillon, and you got Bubba Wallace, who ran in 2013. Kyle Larson was in that race. Ace, you have a lot of drivers who were either making a name for themselves or already had a name in the series and were starting to gain traction that were at those races, and it didn't pan out. But you also have the argument that Truck Series isn't going to fill the entire grandstands at most racetracks. I think the only racetrack that's ever going to sell out for the Camping World Truck Series is honestly Eldora. And Eldora can only hold 20,000 people. So for a track like North Wilkesboro, there's definitely some concern that they are not going to be able to be put up to the task, or the fans are not going to be able to. But you also have to keep in mind, when North Wilkesboro, that track left, that economy was absolutely decimated. North Wilkesboro has not recovered or from NASCAR leaving back in 96. So I'm for sure they will show up. It's the rest of the NASCAR fans that are arguing whether or not I want to go to Charlotte or Darlington or Martinsville or Richmond or any other track in that area over a track that has been rotting for 20 years. And there's going to have to be some major or significant upgrades. You have to have safer barriers, something that Eldora hasn't been able to add. You have to add, and you're probably going to have to add lights. You're going to have to get a pit wall. You're going to have to redo the entire grandstands, the concessions, the restrooms. You have to redo pretty much everything from the ground up to get that racetrack back up and running. Yeah. And NASCAR has, and this is basically it's probably going to take more to redo it, like remodel. That is going to be a building in a brand new racetrack that is similar to to basically North Wilkesboro or Rockingham. Now, it's going to take a lot of money. I don't think Steve Phelps and I gotta give him credit for bringing this track back into the spotlight, because it opens a whole can of worms. And for NASCAR fans clamoring to bring this track back. But this is an investment, and quite honestly, that North Wilkesboro probably is never going to be able to make up if they were to redo it. So I just can't see it. and I want to see it. I want to see it, but I just can't see it.
Fair points. Hal, anything to add on the subject?
I'd like to point out that wanting to bring back old tracks in some cases can be a case of nostalgia. And one thing about nostalgia is it can wear off when it's brought back. Say they bring back North Wilkesboro, it gets good attendance the first year. The second year and the third year, you need consistency. You have to have a consistent attendance to maintain the track and continue making money. And another thing is you do need to spend money to make money. If you don't have money, then you can't do that, which is the problem for the area surrounding. So I think it is a Hail Mary if they try to bring it back. And the thing with a Hail Mary is when it succeeds, man, it's really great, but it usually doesn't. It usually does not succeed. I hope it does. I hope they can bring it back and it's successful and the North Wilkesboro area is back to flourishing from the racetrack being back, but I just don't see it happening. And one more thing I'd like to point out about the ratings. It was an unfortunate time slot they did it because that Saturday was not NASCAR's Saturday. It belonged to the return of live sports because that UFC 249 was taking place that day. Prelims were starting in the late afternoon, so people were wanting to watch live sports with real athletes in a capacity competing. Not just I like iRacing, but it just doesn't compare to the real thing. And the real thing came back. So it was I think if they did it Sunday, it probably would have done better because then it wouldn't have been competing with anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of scheduling, basically. And I know Sunday was Mother's Day, and they probably wanted to take that day off because, hey, it's Mother's Day. But at the same time, scheduling conflicts just seems to be NASCAR's thing right now, or at least something revolving around NASCAR. I'm definitely not mentioning anything. Scheduling NASCAR Heat 5 at the same time as F1 2020. Sorry. I'm sorry. I just really had to get that out. But yeah, it's definitely something that has not played in NASCAR's favor. And I feel like the nostalgia factor that Hal brought up, it can kind of, in a way, be tied to the Southern 500 at Darlington. Don't get me wrong. I love the Southern 500 on its Labor Day weekend date. I think that's the perfect time to have it. Keep it there as long as you can, forever and ever, till the end of time. I'll be happy with that date. But the nostalgia factor with the throwback schemes, they're starting to run out of ideas. I mean, they have a theme every year. I mean, it was the 50s one year, then it was the 60s the next, and then it was 70s or 80s. What was it last year? The 90s, if I'm correct?
I think it was an 80s, 90s combo. Oh, I'm not sure, except for Stuart Haas went with the Tony Stewart paint schemes or Tony Stewart going into the Hall of Fame. And I think the 18 of Joe Gibbs did go with interstate batteries for Bobby Labonte.
Yeah, that was it's just the themes, they're starting to, once you exhaust the list of themes, you start running out of throwback ideas. And I feel like as the years go on, they're going to try to keep doing this throwback theme, but it's not going to really work out because they're going to start running out of schemes to replicate. So that's just the drawback that I could see out of at least the throwback aspect. But as you mentioned, nostalgia, it wears off after a while. And I'm hopeful. I wish North Wilkesboro can come back. I think that the weekend they just had is a great sign for them, especially considering that iRacing moved up their release date of the track much earlier than expected. It has some fan support around it, or at least if it didn't have it before, which it most certainly did have some fan support, it has a much bigger supporting fan base behind it now. So Save the Speedway at North Wilkesboro can rest assured that the track is probably, it's going to be all right, at least for a little bit longer. And Dale Jr. is going to have his Lost Speedways series. North Wilkesboro, I'm sure will be on there, and it's going to be airing on the new NBC streaming service Peacock this summer.
I will say this, is North Wilkesboro did their job. They did their job to make sure that they had a successful race. And the drivers brought it. Every single driver brought it at their A game to North Wilkesboro, except for Clint Boyer, or he was probably on a B, but that's probably better than what we were going to get from him in any other race. But Fox brought their A game. Everybody brought their A game, I think, except for having it on Saturday. And you brought up how Sunday was Mother's Day. That has not stopped NASCAR before. NASCAR races on Sunday almost every single year. I think it's they go to Pocono, Richmond, and they always go to a different track on Mother's Day, but it's always on that Sunday. And so I just don't see the reason why they raced on Saturday. But again, everybody wants to see North Wilkesboro back. It's putting down the chips to see if you can get it done. And because it's going to be a very big Hail Mary to get that track back to any form of racing whatsoever.
Right. Absolutely. So we've talked quite a bit about North Wilkesboro, but we have a lot of other topics to go over. So let's get into those. I do want to bring up Chicagoland Speedway, because if you remember last week, we discussed how there were 3 tracks that were announced that they were going to lose their Cup Series dates. Sonoma, Chicagoland, and Richmond was going to lose one of its Cup Series dates. Those would be going to Charlotte and Darlington, respectively. But there was a lot of buzz earlier this week about the future of Chicagoland Speedway and how it could really be in trouble. I've got the article pulled up, and I want to hang on a second. I'll just share this anyway, and then get to, here it is. So this article is courtesy of Jerry Jordan at kickingthetires.net. It says that the future of Chicagoland Speedway will not be affected by plans for a new industrial complex, and the track itself will be spared. There was a lot of talk that an industrial complex was set to be built and that Chicagoland Speedway would be closing and would not be reopening because of the industrial plant, or at least the industrial complex that is set to be built. However, the next day, it was confirmed that Chicagoland would still be open and that there is talk of development. In fact, here it is right here. According to reports, Hillwood Investments Partners is applying for the subdivision on behalf of NASCAR Enterprises, LLC. They fully own Chicagoland Speedway and a number of other tracks around the country. Even though the final plot encompasses about half of the track, warehouses planned for the site would not interfere with the track itself. So, I mean, that's a good sign. Chicagoland, it's still open. Justin, I'll start with you. I know you're a Chicago native. You live pretty close to the Speedway. I guess I'll start with you on this one. What were your initial thoughts when you heard that Chicagoland might be closing for good?
I didn't think it was going to be closing. And when I saw the initial Joliet at plans and they kind of laid out the track, I mean, there were some subdivisions that were on the Speedway itself, but they weren't encompassing the whole racetrack. So my initial thought was they were going to do something with the surrounding area with the parking lots that are not being currently used. Because Chicagoland Speedway, the thing about it is when I stopped going to that racetrack, which was about 2017, and I want to say I wasn't able to go to 2018 and 2019 because I was working, but there was nothing in that area. There was nothing surrounding that racetrack except for a church that was about 7 0.7 of a mile away from the racetrack and the dirt track that's next door. So they have a ton, and I mean a ton of land, and that they don't use whatsoever, or because, as I'm not saying Chicagoland doesn't sell out, but it's 75,000. They can have 250,000 in those lots. They're almost always is completely empty except for those who just want a lot more space on race weekend. So, my initial thought was they're going to try to do something like Kansas. So I think this is actually good for Chicagoland Speedway that they are starting to industrialize around that area. And you're starting to see a lot more growth and potential coming out of that space because there's almost nothing around that area for about 3 miles. So when you go to that racetrack, it is just completely abandoned. Now, there is one development that slipped by everyone, and this wasn't there when I last was there, but there is now an IKEA that is near the racetrack. So NASCAR sold that land a couple of years ago to IKEA, and they have a giant complex there, or about the same size as the one they have in Schaumburg. But it's good for NASCAR. I'm not sure I like the what they're going to be doing with that land. I was kind of hoping for a lot more development in terms of like maybe they put the casino there because Illinois now legalizes gambling. And there's a couple of things you could definitely do with that area because that part of Joliet is completely empty, and it's going to be good for Chicagoland Speedway, I feel, in the long run.
Yeah, I would say more development around the area would definitely help. I mean, even at Daytona, which I was fortunate enough to visit Daytona in I'm trying to think 2018, spring of 2018. I went there and they have a giant shopping plaza just right across the street from the Speedway. Well, I think it's one Daytona, and I think even there's some corporate offices for NASCAR or motorsports organization that are headquartered in that shopping plaza, but they've got a lot to do around the track. Kansas has a lot to do around the track.
Atlanta's developing a giant, planning on developing like whatever they're doing. It's almost everything under the sun.
Yeah. Atlanta's trying to develop. There was even a plan for Rockingham to try to develop some stuff around their track, and I don't know if those plans have gone by the wayside or whatnot. But even Nashville, there was the Nashville Speedway. There were some plans to try to get some stuff built around there. I think those plans have been put on hold temporarily, but we'll just have to wait and see on Nashville. Hal, concerning Chicagoland, I'm trying to think of the right question to ask here, but for Chicagoland, it was close. Did you think Chicagoland had a chance of closing, or were the rumors, did you think just blowing smoke, basically?
We kind of went through this earlier this year with Homestead, those weird rumors that Homestead would close down. So I was kind of going, I don't know. I don't think they're going to be that drastic to where Chicagoland will have to close down. That'd be a major market going out for NASCAR if they had to close that track down. I couldn't imagine them wanting to leave that behind, really, because Chicagoland is one of the better mile and a half. It has a good reputation with the fans lately, and when it has a good reputation, it's in a major market. I just couldn't see NASCAR letting it go.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to Chicago and tracks that are in Chicago, like we mentioned it last week, the Chicago Motor Speedway in Cicero, how that was originally built for open wheel competition for kart when they were still around. And then that race only lasted 4 years before it got canceled and the stands were red tagged. And eventually the track was opened and demolished within 5 years, which is really sad. But and I kept thinking, oh no, this is going to happen again in Chicago, except this time it's Chicagoland Speedway. And I thought that's unfortunate because I was just starting to like some of the races there. I mean, 2018, 2019, heck, they were some of the best races of the year. 2019, I mean, you had Alex Bowman getting his first win. That was fun and all. But 2018, that fantastic finish with the two Kyles, Busch and the other Kyle, the one that shouldn't be named. I'm just kidding. Kyle Larson.
With you already mentioned him once.
I already, yeah, I did. Here I am being hypocritical. Anyway, the two Kyles battling it out, duking it out with each other, and almost spinning each other. Actually, Busch kind of did spin Larson. Let's admit it. That's what happened. But it was a great finish, and the fans loved it. Or at least some loved it, and anyone who didn't, Kyle basically told, if you don't like that kind of racing, don't even watch. So that was some good racing. Rough maybe, but it was still a great finish. So Chicagoland overall, it's great to see that it's not going away, at least not now, and that there's going to be some development around the area. So hopefully it'll boost the Joliet area even more for its
And
economy.
I will say this: if NASCAR was leaving in the Chicagoland area, they would not be coming back. This would be pretty much the death if in Chicago, Milwaukee, that whole area, north of Bloomington and east of Rockford, that whole area, you can forget about that.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of a little bit, I mean, it made you raise an eyebrow, but more development for Chicagoland Speedway is not going to hurt the racetrack. So hopefully we get a lot more good races on that before NASCAR ruins it with another repave.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next topic that we have, I do want to do a quick update on Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman, for those who are unaware, he is actually going to be back inside a race car this weekend at Darlington. Awesome. Ryan Newman, of course, was injured in a crash back on February 17th, coming to the finish line of the Daytona 500, where his car flipped upside down and then it was hit basically in the driver's window area at 200 miles an hour. Newman suffered what he called a bruised brain in the crash, and in fact, there's a lot of information that was given out just yesterday in a Zoom interview that Ryan Newman did with various members of the media. The article that I have listed in the agenda is from ESPN's Ryan McGee. But basically, Ryan Newman confirmed that both of his helmet and Hans device were quote unquote hit by something in the Daytona crash. And he also described that his helmet was crushed as a result of the impact that his car sustained by Corey LaJoie's oncoming Ford Mustang. Newman said that based on the scans, doctors believe that he never lost oxygen to his brain, but he was placed in a medically induced coma for a day once he was entered into Halifax Health Hospital in Daytona Beach, just down the street from the Daytona International Speedway. Newman recalls nothing of the race or even of the crash itself, and his first memory from around that time period is of him leaving the hospital with his daughters, which, I mean, that's great. That's a great thing to remember. And half of the doctors there at the hospital said that he had had a concussion. The other half said he did not have a concussion, so he basically labeled his injury as a bruised brain. And he even detailed that when he saw a replay of the accident, he had to convince himself that he had gone through that and he had lived through that. And another thing that I don't think we detailed in the agenda, but I do want to bring it up, is that the fact that Ryan Newman survived in large part due to the really strong structure of the car that he was driving and its roll cage, but also the fact that for that race, he was wearing a helmet. He was wearing a brand new helmet that he had never worn before. It was, according to Ryan McGee's article from ESPN, Newman survived in large part due to the roll cage construction and a new type of helmet that he was using for the first time, a carbon fiber model by Arai designed to be more durable while also providing flexibility to better absorb impacts. So basically what we've just stated is all the information that we got from Newman regarding his accident at Daytona, basically step by step of what all he went through. But the bottom line is he's called himself a walking miracle. And I don't think that's an overstatement. What do you think, Hal?
I think that's spot on. It's no short of a miracle that he made it through that crash. And the fact that he's going to be racing in 2 days is nothing short of amazing. That's what's really got me hype for this Sunday. We're going to see Ryan Newman back in a race car, and that's going to be awesome to see.
Yeah, Justin, your take on it?
I mean, there's just I still can't wrap my head around it. I still cannot wrap my head around that accident and how not even 2 days later he's walking out of the hospital. 2 days later he's walking out of the hospital with nothing but a brain and bruise.
Yeah, I mean, no other physical injuries either. It was just the brain bruise. I mean, obviously a bruised brain is bad in any circumstance, but the fact that nothing else was hurt, there were no other injuries. I mean, it's miraculous.
It's a miracle. It's simply put a miracle. And I mean, and I know that it's a memory he's probably going to want. I mean, it's probably going to be a memory that he kind of wishes he has, and kind of a memory he wishes he doesn't have. But just the fact that everything came together in that moment to keep him alive, it just blows my mind, and just how he was able to take a probable, and when he says probably hit, he probably was hit by a 200-mile-an-hour race car or from Corey LaJoie. In the one part of the car that I think we could unanimously agree would be the worst to get hit on.
Yeah.
And we've seen no car take that hit in years. We haven't seen that type of hit. And so, again, props to the NASCAR Safe R&D Center. Props to the Ryan Newman for wearing that new helmet. Just props to everyone and all around for keeping him safe during that wreck as much as he could have. But I will stress this again. We cannot get complacent about safety. We've always got to push us forward, or we got to be ahead of this rather than reacting to it.
Be proactive rather than reactive. Basically, kind of a sentiment that was echoed, or maybe not echoed, but basically emphasized by NASCAR in the year 2000, going into 2001. NASCAR, I would say, was reactive to a lot of stuff that happened. There weren't a lot of changes made after NASCAR lost 3 drivers that year: Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin Jr., and Tony Roper, before Dale Earnhardt's death in the 01 Daytona 500 made NASCAR realize, oh, we've got to make the changes now. And then, even then, the Hans device wasn't required until Blaze Alexander was killed in an ARCA event in October later that year. So, with all of those incidents aside, NASCAR, they learned that they need to be proactive, and they took a stance on safety that hasn't really been, I mean, it's been seen in other sports, but they really upped their game after the Earnhardt incident. And it's unfortunate that Dale Earnhardt's no longer with us, but props to NASCAR for taking the steps necessary, and that no driver has been lost to an accident since then, because Ryan Newman's death was not death. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. Ryan Newman's accident was the closest that NASCAR got to a fatality since, I would say, Eric McClure at Talladega 2012. Because there have been a lot of dangerous accidents since then. And there have been, like, Newman's accident was the type where, I mean, you were worried, you were concerned right away because it looked bad. Eric McClure, just the impact he had, it looked bad. Dale Earnhardt's accident, it didn't look bad from the surface, but once you saw other angles of it, once you saw the replay again, that's when you realized it looked bad. There have been a lot of bad accidents that NASCAR's had, and some drivers have walked away fine, others have been injured, but since Dale Earnhardt's death, nothing has happened, no serious driver death has occurred behind the wheel of a NASCAR stock car, and that's something that NASCAR can be applauded for. And also extra props to the Halifax Health Safety Team and the medical personnel there at Daytona to help basically save Ryan Newman's life in that situation. It's because of them and because of prayers and best well wishes from race fans and the efforts of the NASCAR R&D safety team that Ryan Newman is going to be racing at Darlington in 2 days. So,
and hopefully this is the last time we have to bring up this discussion, but just the fact that again, just a full-blown miracle was happened on that night.
Absolutely. Let's go to the next topic. We're going to break away from NASCAR because we need to talk about Formula One because a lot happened in Formula One. The silly season for 2020 going into 2021 really ramped up this week on Formula One. And at first we were going to start with just one driver having a big change in their ride, but it basically has caused a domino effect. So let's start with what happened on, I think it was Tuesday when this happened, when Scuderia Ferrari and Sebastian Vettel, Ferrari announced that Sebastian Vettel would not be racing at Ferrari after the 2020 season. Basically, this is his last year with Ferrari. So then the search instantly became, who replaces Sebastian Vettel at Ferrari? Who replaces a 4-time world drivers champion in the Scarlet car, in the Scarlet Ferrari? Well, that question was answered a day later as Carlos Sainz, who currently drives for McLaren F1, the McLaren Renault team, Sainz will be moving to Ferrari for 2021. So then the question is, who goes to McLaren now, with Sainz going to Ferrari? Well, Mr. Smiley himself, Daniel Ricciardo, is going to McLaren for 2021. So now Sebastian Vettel is looking for a ride. I feel like there's only one place I feel like he can go if he wants to remain competitive, but I'll save my opinion for last. I'm going to start with Justin on this. Before we get into the Vettel situation, I did want to bring up one more. Renault, the team that Daniel Ricciardo currently drives for, they're going to have an empty spot, and they've been teasing a return of Fernando Alonso to their team. Fernando Alonso has had 2 stints with Renault already, and he has history with them in the past. He's won, good history. He's won, he's a 2-time Formula One world champion, Alonso is, and he won both of those titles with Renault. So, there's that. But back to Sebastian Vettel. Justin, where does Vettel go for 2021 if he goes anywhere at all?
I don't know if he's going to be with Ferrari after. I don't think he's going to be running it for. I don't know if he's going to be running at Ferrari this year, or given everything that's going on. But just absolute chaos as for silly season. This is May we're talking about. Normally when we're talking about silly season, we're talking September, October, November, or when all these crazy shenanigans are going on the F1 circuit. And someone cranked it up to 11 this year. But just back to, first off, Sainz, this is a huge opportunity for him. We've talked about him on the show. Oh, he's been one of the up-and-comers that's really done well for McLaren. And just, it's great for him to be getting a good ride. But Vettel out at Ferrari after winning 4 championships, I don't think we can stress how big that is. But
for Sainz, this is obviously big for him because the Spaniard, he's Carlos Sainz Jr. Last year when he joined McLaren, he really took off performance-wise. He got his first career podium. He got his first career podium at Brazil, and it was the first podium that McLaren had in I think it was 6 years. But as for who was I going to say? Vettel. Yeah, Vettel. He won all 4 of his driver's titles with Red Bull in his days there. He was with Red Bull from 2009 to 2014, and he won the titles in 10 through 13. But ever since 2014, he just hasn't been the same.
You're still kicking out a 4-time champion and out of your ride. This isn't, and Kurt Busch we're talking about a one-time NASCAR champion that's been hopping around the NASCAR circuit into every single team over the past decade.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a 4-time champion, and that is very rare on the F1 circuit. But I mean, and you and I both know where he's going to go, but I want to get Hal's opinion on where Vettel's going.
Yeah, Hal, go ahead. Where does Vettel go?
That look on Sterling's face tells me that he is not sure about that one. I can't, like, the only place that has an open spot at this moment that I looked at is Renault, and I don't know if Vettel would go to Renault because he probably wants to go somewhere where he knows I'm going to go try to win again.
Yeah.
And I mean, he has won with Red Bull, as you said, and if you want to go with history, I think that's where you go. I mean, you have to go back where you know you can win after you just went to the big-time player in Ferrari and you couldn't get it done. You got to go get your groove back where you knew it was. So that's where I think he'd go.
Okay. This is going to sound pretty bold, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I think this is Vettel's last year in Formula One. Now, hear me out. Hear me out on this. He's not going to go to Red Bull because they're already emphasizing young talent as it is. Vettel's 32 years old, and he's won several races and a lot of world championships already. He's already gone through Red Bull. They're already putting their future behind Max Verstappen in particular, and they're pretty high on Alex Albon. I don't see them getting rid of either driver unless one of them has a giant collapse this season. So Vettel to Red Bull is not happening. Vettel's not going to go to Renault either because he wants to be competitive and he wants to be fast. Daniel Ricciardo joined Renault in 2019 because he was sick and tired of being second fiddle to Verstappen at Red Bull, and they had reliability issues, so he thought Renault was going to pick up the pace and they would be fast and he would help them improve. And they paid Ricciardo a giant amount as well to be their driver. Only problem is Renault took a step backward, and Ricciardo clearly was not happy over there. Hence, he banked his future on McLaren and jumped now while he could. If there was a shot for Vettel to get a competitive ride in Formula One, it would have had to have been McLaren, not Mercedes, which is what I think is the giant option, is the big option that we're not addressing here. The reason why I don't think Vettel's going to go to Mercedes is this. While it sounds like having two drivers with 10 combined World Drivers' Championships on paper sounds like a great idea, it would tear the team apart. I mean, the last time we saw two drivers who were fighting for number one position, because let's be honest, if Vettel joins Mercedes, there's no clear number one there because he will want to be number one over Hamilton, and Hamilton will not let that happen. The last time we had two drivers fighting for the number one spot at a team, Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg produced one of the greatest inter-team rivalries in Formula One history in 2016. And Rosberg came out on top with the world championship, and right after that, he went, bye, Felicia, and left the sport after his world title because he knew Lewis Hamilton was going to be back with a vengeance and that Hamilton would not let Rosberg win another title. So he noped out of there while he could. Valtteri Bottas is basically a number two being like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, to Lewis Hamilton because let's be honest, Hamilton practically runs the show there, but not counting Toto Wolff. Hamilton will not want to be number two to Sebastian Vettel. Vettel will not want to be number two to Hamilton. And if they collide with each other, Toto Wolff and the rest of the Mercedes staff are not going to be happy whatsoever. So at this rate, Vettel knows, I mean, Lewis Hamilton, he's been there since 2013. He's been there a long time now at the Mercedes factory team. I just don't see how Sebastian Vettel is going to go to Mercedes and just not immediately cause some sort of controversy there with Hamilton. And another thing, I mean, Mercedes already pays a lot to Lewis Hamilton, like a giant astronomical amount to Lewis Hamilton to drive for them. They would have to match that amount and maybe go further with Sebastian Vettel. So it's already a lot of money that Mercedes would be paying to their drivers, and it'd be another thing to have them crash out if they do. I mean, we saw what happened with Hamilton and Rosberg in Spain 2016. You saw what happened on the first lap. We'd be seeing that again with Hamilton and Vettel. That's basically why I don't think Vettel's going to Mercedes. And if there was a chance for him to go anywhere, it would have to be with McLaren. But McLaren apparently never even considered Vettel, because they saw Ricciardo right away and they went, you want to drive for our team? Fantastic. Get on here. We're going to ride this train together. So, yeah, I think this is Vettel's last year, because he's not going to want to drive for Williams. Williams is, I mean, no offense to the Williams team, but they're way back there. They're slow. Vettel will not want to be driving for a backmarker team. He won't want to drive for Aston Martin, which right now is Racing Point. He won't want to drive for Renault because they're too slow. He won't want to drive for Alfa Romeo because they're too slow, unless he really is passionate about the ride and just driving in Formula One and doesn't have a priority over how much speed is in the car. In which case, yeah, then maybe take a ride there. But if you want to win races and compete for world championships, you've got to go for a team like Red Bull, McLaren now, because they're on the rise, Ferrari, but he can't go because he's obviously gone, or especially Mercedes. I don't think he's got a shot with any of them. So if he's going to take the competitive nature over just for the love of racing, for the sake of it, this is it for Vettel.
You know what? And I knew you were going to say it, and I'm thinking the exact same thing, because I thought because I knew for a fact that Vettel and Hamilton would just be a fire and gasoline. That would be a total disaster.
Yeah,
I mean, a Mercedes would be pretty much a lock at that point for a manufacturer's title. But it's just an absolute disaster to have that many personalities in that organization, and those two would not mix well. And you're right, Red Bull is going young, and McLaren's already got their guys. So yeah. I think this is it for the 4-time champion in F1. However, I don't think he's going to be done with racing just yet. I think there's a good chance that he might go to IndyCar or next season just for a one-off. Maybe run the Indy 500. We've heard rumors that Ferrari is trying to get into the Indy 500 next year. So maybe it's not F1, but maybe it's IndyCar, or for a 4-time champion like Vettel.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure, especially considering how Ferrari was talking about Vettel in their press conferences. It sounded like they made an offer and Vettel was not happy about it. If that burns the bridges between those two, then forget an Indy 500 bid with Ferrari, because that's not going to happen. But, I mean, Vettel could go to IndyCar with another team. I don't know who he'd go with. But, I mean, the situation reminds me of when Kimi Räikkönen was trying to find a ride in after 2013 going into 14, because he had left the Lotus F1 team and was trying to find a competitive ride. And there were so many rumors saying Raikkonen's going to go to Red Bull, Raikkonen to Red Bull, Raikkonen to Red Bull. I'm like, Raikkonen's not going to go to Red Bull. I mean, it'd be great. It sounds like it'd be great on paper, but Vettel was at the top of his game, and Raikkonen, I feel like if Red Bull put Raikkonen and Vettel together, it would be two guys fighting for the number one spot, and it wouldn't end well. So they went with Daniel Ricciardo to be kind of a subservient number 2 driver, and ironically, Ricciardo actually did much better than Vettel that season. So it's interesting what happens. That's the situation that it reminded me of concerning Vettel. Could he go to Mercedes? No, I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, just really strange week concerning the silly season. It was basically the silly season ramped up to 11 for Formula One. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens up until the season gets going. The season for Formula One is supposed to start in July in Austria. So fingers crossed that it actually
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Tell you what, we've reached almost the 9 o'clock hour. I think, Hal, it's a good time for you to give us the Money Team update. So please tell us, Hal Eastep, how's the Money Team doing?
So the entry list came out for Darlington, and if you just put bets that the Money Team wasn't on it, then you made a lot of money, because the 50 car is not on there. Floyd Mayweather's team is nowhere to be found. I am still there's no information being shared anymore. I don't know what's going on with them.
Yep.
I'll give it 50-1 odds. He shows up every single week from here on out. Oh, just for you.
Give it 1,000-1. Those are the odds for Timmy Hill to win this weekend. 1,000-1. 1,000-1 odds. This has been the Money Team update. So, with the Money Team update out of the way, let's what do you say we dive into? Let's get into some other news. We'll fire it off real quickly. Just brief, very, very brief discussions on these. Starting with Tommy Baldwin Racing. They are coming back to Cup Series competition this weekend at Darlington. They will be racing this Sunday in their number 7 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1. Josh Balicki will be the driver of the number 7. It is the first Cup race that Tommy Baldwin Racing will attempt since 2017. So, hey, I mean, it's great to see a small team get back into it, isn't it?
Welcome back, Tommy Baldwin. We've missed you.
Yeah.
And glad to see you back in the 7 instead of the 7 they won. That was not a good marketing decision, but good to see the 7 car back on track, and hopefully they can get a top 1, maybe top 30 this weekend.
Are you telling me that Tommy Baldwin Racing returned before the Money Team even got on the track?
Yes, it did. In fact, it's much more likely to happen. It's much more likely. So, next item is that also BJ McLeod is going to be entering competition with his racing team. BJ McLeod Motorsports for this weekend. I mean, not much else to say there, I would think.
Besides the fact that this is a continuation of the growing empire of Rick Ware Racing. I'm not sure if we brought it up, but Rick Ware's been buying a little bit of buying a few more charters over the past couple of weeks. He's got now the 15 and the 27 under his grasp. So Rick Ware Racing continues to grow into the ever-expanding evil empire of the back of the field.
An armada of
Rick Ware
backmarkers.
Overlords.
Armada of backmarkers. My goodness. Rick Ware's got a stronghold on the backmarkers. Last cars. The last cars on the grid. It just reminds me of Brock Beard's channel. Brock Beard's a great YouTube content creator, by the way. Highly recommend. Move on to Brett Moffitt. In fact, Ryan Newman wasn't the only driver who was sitting out injured. Brett Moffitt broke both of his legs in a dirt bike accident back in March. However, Moffitt has now been medically cleared, and the 2018 Truck Series champion will return to competition at the next NGROTS race, and he will do so without having missed a single race. Talk about that. Breaking both legs and you don't miss a single race.
Talk about timing. A very unfortunate way to have to not miss any races, but
yeah,
that's luck for Moffitt, really.
Saves you a lot. Saves you a lot of paperwork with NASCAR or not having to fill out the waiver forms. But we thought Ryan Newman was lucky with only missing 3 races. Brett Moffitt's not going to miss a single race. He's in competition this season, so that's great for that team and great for him to get back to the racetrack. The timing of this could not have been better. Yeah.
I mean, unfortunate circumstances, but
yes,
timing still. I mean, it's something. Also, a quick announcement that the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series are going to expand to 40 vehicle grids for races without qualifying. I think this is pretty big considering how Xfinity, their grids have been shortened to 36 for this season before the pandemic. Now they're at 40. and the trucks had previously had their grids shortened to 32. So for both of them to get to 40, it's there's more opportunities for smaller teams to get involved there and to try to make some money at the very least.
I mean, we had 43 trucks go to Daytona this season? We had 43 trucks go to Daytona this season to try and qualify for that race. And so we knew that the trucks needed to expand. That's been in order for a while. Getting those guys back up to 36. Because I'm glad that they're going to get 40 for the time being. And the Xfinity Series they were originally at 36. I mean, not 36. They were originally at 40. I'm glad that they're back up to 40. A lot of good cars are going to be coming back to the racetrack. So great to see them. And Morgan Shepherd, congrats on qualifying for another season.
Morgan Shepherd. I hope he never leaves. Morgan Shepherd is back. Fantastic. Hal, anything to add real quick?
It'll be interesting to see the speed of some of those cars in the back. I'm a little bit wary on those cars.
I just hope none of them LePage the field.
Oh, no.
I just hope none of them go out in the middle of the track and end up taking out the leaders. I hope they don't do what Kevin LePage did at Talladega in 2008.
Tony Stewart won that race by default practically with that move.
Yeah, pretty much. Let's see. On to the next topic. This is actually a sad one. Myrtle Beach Speedway, a track that hosted some NASCAR Busch Series races from 1988 to 2000. It appears set to be closing. It appears set to close after the 2020 season. Their season finale, from what I read on their website or from a recent news article, is that their last race is scheduled for August. Before that, track will be closed down. Tough break for the short track out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Yep. So with that, we can go to from one South Carolina headline to another. And this, Justin, you shared this with me in the group chat. This is just plain strange and obviously dangerous. For those who didn't know, a Darlington, South Carolina man was arrested and charged for making terroristic threats against Darlington Raceway. In fact, now I'm just going to look this up. But actually, no, I don't want to give that guy recognition because he's kind of an idiot for doing this. He claimed to have access to over 125 bombs / weapons of mass destruction, and basically planned to blow up Darlington Raceway on the day of the race. I mean, it's strange, it's ridiculous, but at the same time, it just makes you raise your eyebrows like, really? That's just so bizarre.
It just...
Where do you begin?
You guys are speechless. You don't know what to say. It's just so bizarre.
People will do anything to get their message across. We'll say that. And good thing they caught this lunatic, because I can't even imagine, and just the absolute nightmare that would be.
Yeah, like if it was actually going to happen, then yeah, do something about it. But I don't know. Hal, you have something to say on it?
I am just, what? Why? You do whatever you want to get your message across, but I am sitting here going, what's your message even? I don't get what you're doing this for other than attention?
I don't know.
I can't imagine why you would do this.
Especially on a track where there's going to be no fans there. I mean, there aren't going to be any fans. I mean, there will be faculty of crews and drivers, but aside from them and some select media members, I don't know who else would be there.
It's 900 people there, according to Adam Surd, but this just makes no sense. This just makes no sense, other than some guy hey, who's probably ticked off about something,
Yeah.
trying to get his message across in a very poor and disrespectful way. So glad they caught this guy, and glad we're never going to hear his message about his manifesto about let's just say the internet and YouTube or something like that, and we will never hear from this guy again.
Does this group know their security at the track?
It kind of reminds me of I know it's slightly different, but it kind of reminds me of a Bob Jenkins quote during a Winston Cup broadcast, and I think it was Talladega '93, where he said, "Anyone who throws anything on a racetrack is not a race fan. They are a racing idiot." It's like perfect. I love Bob Jenkins. The great Bob Jenkins. In fact, he's actually going to be commentating an iRacing event, I think on Monday. So we'll get to hear his voice there, which would be great to hear. I always love hearing the voice of the great Bob Jenkins.
What about guys who steal the pace car?
Oh, yeah. Maybe. Oh, God. Let's not get any ideas now. Moving on now. This is getting out of hand. Ferrari, Justin mentioned it earlier. Ferrari is evaluating a possible entry into IndyCar. Yeah, it's for real. They even confirmed it. They're evaluating it, and it could come as soon as 2022. Concerning Ferrari going into IndyCar, the possibility of that happening, I don't think we can overstate how big of a deal this would be. Hal, I'll start with you on this. How big would it be?
That'd be massive. That's one of the premier teams in F1 moving to IndyCar for the Indy 500, I would assume. And you just got to think, how competitive would they be, first of all? If they are competitive, do they consider going past just an Indy 500? Because then you think, well, if we can compete here, we can compete the other racetracks. And then you got a new huge team that I'm sure all of the other IndyCar guys, judging by how they've reacted in iRacing, getting beat by F1 drivers, I think it would be a big rivalry brewing between Ferrari and the big IndyCar teams like Penske.
It would be something, all right. I'll say that much. I'm not sure about the logistics, but I do know that Ferrari's going to have a little bit of money left over from that $141 million cap that F1's putting on these guys in 2022.
Yeah, somewhere around that amount.
So they're going to have money to burn. So they could definitely get into IndyCar. That's not a question. The question is how would IndyCar react? This would be basically a foreign invasion. We talked about how the F1 guys have been being the crud out of the IndyCar guys, and it's been across the board with V8 too, with McLaughlin and kicking butt over there. But this would definitely be one of the most interesting things to happen in IndyCar since the merger of CART and IRC. Or is that correct? IRC?
IRL.
My bad. And still kind of getting used to the IndyCar side, not gonna lie, but this would definitely turn that sport on its head a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Ferrari entering the sport would obviously be a big deal because just for the name recognition alone, Ferrari is one of the biggest brands in the world in terms of cars. But there are two things to consider here. Number one, would they be an independent team entering the sport, or would they merge with another team that's already established, like how McLaren did this year with Sam Schmidt's operation, Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports? Or would they try to do what McLaren did in 2019 that didn't work out so well? And another thing that comes to mind, if they field their own engines, how would that work? I mean, would they be competitive with Honda and Chevrolet right off the bat? Or would they be something like Lotus 2012? And if you don't know what I'm referencing, you're not missing out on much because Lotus was slow in 2012. Like, they entered the sport as an engine supplier that year. They only lasted one season. In fact, it got worse. I think they had like around 5 or 6 entries, maybe even 7, of the full-time drivers in IndyCar. By the time they made it to the Indy 500 for the 5th race of the year, all but 2 of those teams had switched to different engines.
Just think of the tire war. Just think of, for comparison, just think of the tire wars back in the 1990s is with Hoosiers, and you can figure out the rest.
Yeah, Hoosiers and Goodyears. That was something for sure.
Oof.
All right, now with Ferrari out of the way, that includes the other news, basically. So now we get into some deep dives here with some more NASCAR, IndyCar, and IMSA schedule changes. So we'll start. Let's go ahead and start with just this one because it's probably one of the simple changes. IndyCar's St. Petersburg Grand Prix, which was initially scheduled for mid-March before the pandemic got serious, like seriously serious in the United States, and wiped out sports as we know it. St. Petersburg Grand Prix has been rescheduled to October 25th, and it will serve as the season finale for the NTT IndyCar Series season in 2020. I mean, it goes without saying, it's nice to have it rescheduled, especially considering fans that had tickets to the event and, you know, contractors that were there to help set up the course. So it'll be nice to reward them, in a sense, to have it serve as the season finale.
Yeah, can't complain about this one. We kind of saw it coming, and it's nice to see that this track has gone from first race of the season to off the schedule to back on to back off to not even having it at all to it being the finale of the season. And it would be a great way to finish the IndyCar season, and hopefully by the time October rounds, and hopefully there's a couple more races in there in between.
Yep. Also, IMSA has announced that they will return to action on the 4th of July weekend, and they will run a race at Daytona. So another race on the Daytona Infield Road Course. I mean, even though it's another race there at Daytona, which they usually don't do 2 races at Daytona every year, but considering the circumstances, it'll just be nice to get racing back for IMSA especially, and for everyone, really.
Yeah, I think the location isn't that surprising considering how Florida has kind of gotten, I guess, a reputation as where sports are returning, really.
Really just the Southeast in general, I would say. I mean, with summer starting to come up, and if researchers are saying that this pandemic, it can go down in the summer when it gets warmer in the warmer months, that'll help. I mean, it'll help with the warmer temperatures. Now we've got those 2 knocked out of the way. Let's dig into the meat of the schedule changes with NASCAR, because there were a lot of schedule updates that were announced. We'll start with the Cup Series just because it's the premier series. So obviously this weekend, they're going to restart action at Darlington. It'll be a 400-mile event. Then they're going to have another race at Darlington that Wednesday night. Then they'll go to Charlotte for the Coke 600 on May the 24th, Memorial Day weekend. After that, they'll do another race in Charlotte on the Wednesday night. From Charlotte, we begin the newly announced section of races that were recently announced just yesterday. The Cup Series will go to Bristol Motor Speedway on May 31st. Then they'll go to Atlanta for June 7th. They'll go to Martinsville for a midweek race, a Wednesday night showdown. It'll be the first night race held in Martinsville Speedway's history. Then they'll travel to Homestead, Florida at the Homestead Miami Speedway for a race at June 14th. And then they'll go to Talladega June 21st. This means that the NASCAR weekend at Kansas, which was initially set for the last weekend of May, the 29th through the 31st, has been postponed. and that there will be no NASCAR IndyCar combination event at Texas during the first weekend of June. Going on to the Xfinity Series, there will be an Xfinity race on, I want to say, Tuesday for Darlington. Then they'll have another race on Saturday at Charlotte, another Charlotte event on Tuesday night. Then they'll travel to Bristol May 30th. After that, they'll go to Atlanta on June 6th. Then they'll travel to Homestead for 2 races. It'll be a doubleheader for the Xfinity Series, June 13th and 14th, before traveling to Talladega for a race on Saturday, June the 20th. I should mention June 21st, the Cup race at Talladega will be held on Father's Day in 2020. As for the Xfinity schedule that we go back to, all NASCAR events at the Iowa Speedway have been canceled for 2020. There will be no NASCAR action in Newton, Iowa this season. The June 14th race at Homestead replaces the June date that Iowa held, and the rest of Iowa's dates will be announced at a later date. And also, Dale Jr. is going to be racing the race on the June 13th at Homestead Miami Speedway. He had mentioned that he was going to run Homestead long before the season had gotten started, and he announced that he will be running on June 13th for that Homestead event. The Truck Series, they will be running May the 25th at Charlotte before they go on to race at Atlanta on June the 6th and Homestead to pair up with the Xfinity Series that day on June the 13th. As for ARCA, their next date is scheduled for, or at least from the new announcements, because they'll have a race at Charlotte. Their next race after Charlotte is scheduled for June 20th at the Talladega Super Speedway. So I've just laid a lot of information on you guys. But is there any one date, or like I'd say dates, that stick out to either of you? I'll start with Hal on this subject.
There's one date, but also another thing that sticks out to me. The Martinsville first night race. That's going to be something that's must watch for NASCAR fans since it's the first one. That's something that, first of all, midweek racing, I mean, clamored for it. Here it is. It's Martinsville, a track that everyone seems to love, especially when there's some nice rivalries brewing out there.
Short track racing.
That's right. And first night race should get some fireworks under the lights. What sticks out to me is the no NASCAR Indy combo at Texas. I think we kind of knew it was going to happen because, let's be honest, as a concept, that's mostly for the fans. And without them there, it's kind of pointless to have it happen because you're having a bunch of different crews in one place, which, first of all, that would be a problem with the current circumstances. And secondly, the purpose is already defeated. You wanted to bring these fans together, 2 separate series, and you can't do that now. So you can delay it further, and hopefully in the future we can get it, but this is the right move.
Yeah, there's a couple of dates that really stick out to me, and the 2 that really kind of catch my eye is the Homestead races and the Talladega races. And that's for one particular reason. You're going to have 2 races on the same day at that racetrack. There's going to be almost no time in between those 2 races. One's going to be at 12, one's going to be at 3 o'clock. So I'm wondering, how the heck are you guys going to keep those guys safe if when they're crossing when one group of cars are leaving the racetrack and another's coming back onto pit road to start for the starting grid? So that's a little bit concerning that NASCAR's kind of condensing the schedule. I would kind of rather have them go Friday, Saturday, Sunday instead of these 2 Saturday, Sunday combos. But I also get you don't want to have crews out there for 3 days in a row if you don't have to have that. But right. It's a lot. I mean, this weekend you're going to have 900 people at Darlington on Sunday. Tuesday you're going to have 900 people. I mean, around 850 people there. and then Wednesday you're back to 900. So you're basically doubling that for those races at Talladega, at Homestead, and on those single days. I'm not a big fan of that, and those are also races where you're going to have to fly guys out. Those are not going to be drivable distant races. So I was a little bit surprised to see that we had a couple of those races out there, especially Talladega. But I like Bristol being on May 31st. Hopefully the weather cooperates for that race. We know how hard Bristol is to get in during the spring race. It's Atlanta. That makes sense. Martinsville, we had to wait a little bit, but at Virginia, with Virginia lifting the sanctions on June 10th, if that race makes perfect sense to have the first night race on that night. It's a very interesting, it's a very ambitious schedule, and I'm hoping that the teams are ready for it. But I'd rather get cars back on track first before we announce anything else.
Yeah, and I appreciate that NASCAR is taking, they announced this next section of the schedule. It's not the rest of the season, because they're really going on local governments and state governments, what sanctions they have on guidelines in their municipalities to determine, okay, what tracks are we going to go to next? What tracks, are we having to avoid? Which ones are safe? Which ones can we go to? They're taking this on seemingly a bi-weekly or monthly basis. And I appreciate that cautious approach that they're taking, because it shows that they're approaching this very gradually and very cautiously, because they don't want to push into anything too far. Now, one of the things that, as for the schedule, the thing that caught my eye, obviously with the double headers on like 2 races being held on one day, that's going to be interesting. But I feel like for the ends of the races, they're going to have the drivers already in their cars set up for to start one race. Once a certain race gets done, they'll pull in the garage. Everyone else from that other series comes out at the same time, and they'll just have everyone lined up there. The one concern that I have, if there's any concerns, there is one that I have concerning Homestead and Talladega. Notice the times of the year when they're going to these tracks. And I know that it could be safe in terms of the pandemic by that time, but it is going to be hot. Like in South Florida, mid-June, it's burning hot. I've taken vacations to, I know I'm not the only one who's done it, but I've taken vacations to Florida over the summer, and it is really, really hot. And it really doesn't matter what time of the year it is. I can't imagine if the temperatures are going to be in the 80s or 90s, and especially even at Talladega, Father's Day weekend in Talladega, it's going to be hot there. The last time drivers were, and the thing is, NASCAR has run races at Talladega in the summer before. I remember they used to hold the Winston 500 in mid to late July up until the mid 90s. I think 97 was the last year they had it before they moved the Winston 500 to October. But there would be a lot of drivers having problems with heat stroke and heat exhaustion. I'm just really hoping and praying that doesn't happen when these drivers get behind the wheel of these cars and they heat up inside those cars really quickly. And that fire suit, I mean, it protects them obviously in case a fire happens, but it also contributes to how hot it is inside that car. So it's going to be interesting to see how the drivers handle the temperatures inside these cars when it's already really hot outside the car, not just in terms of track temperature either.
Well, not only that, but you also have to worry about the crew members, and keep in mind, for them, they're going to have another or layer that they're going to have to wear at the racetrack. They're going to have to wear a mask, like the part of their body that usually gets a good amount of air or to it, that's going to be covered up, and that's going to heat up even more or especially with a lot of drivers having a lot, I mean, I would say darker colors to their race cars.
Yeah. I mean, it could prove to be detrimental, but I mean, those are the things that catch my eye, and I'm hopeful that NASCAR will be able to keep going and that they'll be able to nail down these races in a convenient manner, and that everything aligns where they can get those races knocked out. Basically, to put it simply. Let's talk about NASCAR returning this weekend, because there's a lot to cover. The grid procedures and the competition cautions. Now, NASCAR, for the first race back at Darlington this Sunday, they have determined the grid by a random draw. As a result, Brad Keselowski will be starting on the pole for Sunday's race. I'm trying to see if I can find the rest of the grid. Yeah, Brad Keselowski will start on the pole for Sunday's 400-mile race at Darlington. It will be known as the Real Heroes 400. We'll get into more of that in a minute, but Alex Bowman will be starting on the outside of the front row. The rest of the top 10 is Matt DiBenedetto, Kyle Busch, Eric Almirola, Kevin Harvick, Ryan Blaney, Jimmy Johnson, points leader Joey Logano, and this year's Daytona 500 winner, Denny Hamlin. So that's the top 10 starters for Sunday's event. If I remember correctly, the grid procedure, they had a random draw for this event, but they're going to invert the field from, I think, positions 1 through 20 on the finishing order.
Correct.
They're going to invert it and have whoever finished 20th in Sunday's race, they'll start on the pole for Wednesday night's race. And then they'll also take positions 21 through 40 and invert those. The only race that's going to have qualifying will be the Coke 600. So, is there, Hal, Justin, is there any more to add about the grid procedure, or did I basically nail it down?
You basically nailed it down. The only thing I really don't like is the inverted, but I get at NASCAR's kind of sensation with that, at seeing how the iRacing events went. I would just rather have the field, you win the race on Sunday, you get to start on pole Wednesday. And I think that would have been a lot more simpler, but this is how NASCAR is going to do it, and so we got to play by NASCAR's rules.
I know this won't happen, but part of me hopes that there becomes a battle for 20th, dropping back to 20th, that is, so that you could start on the pole on Wednesday.
Purposely taking during a race?
Oh, I mean, that wouldn't be taking. That'd be strategic to be in best position next race, though. That'd be a whole new ball game.
I feel like a better way to do this could be just like taking those positions and doing another random draw out of those two separate pools. But at the same time, it reminds me of there was an IndyCar race that was held in 2011 at Texas where they split the 550-kilometer event at Texas into twin 275s. And Dario Franchitti started on the pole for the first event and went out and won it. And then, I think they drew positions based on, I forget what order they drew it in, but I think it was based on random draw, I want to say. Because I know that Wade Cunningham, who was one of the drivers who, I think he finished second to last because he got in a crash with Charlie Kimball early in the first race. He ended up starting second. And then Dario Franchitti, who won the first race, started in 28th. And there were, I think, 30 cars entered for that race. And Will Power, who had finished either second or third, I forget what position it was, but he ended up drawing third. And Power went out and ran away with the second race because Dario Franchitti was way too far back to do anything in the second event. So I can see how that can be disadvantaging. But if there's two separate pools, that could be a difference right then and there. But It is NASCAR's rules. We'll just have to wait and see what they do. They could change the rules. They've done it before. I mean, we saw what their qualifying procedure was last year and how much of a train wreck that was, and up until they decided enough is enough and changed it back to the way it should have been for Bristol.
I mean, group qualifying wasn't that bad, and until everybody kind of relied on the good old fashioned and getting a run on another driver and locking up with them. That's just kind of the nature of this package. But yes, single car qualifying, and geez, I'm all over the place tonight. It is the way to go. Yeah. Oh, preferably, but you gotta make do what you got right now.
Never forget, Austin Dillon won the pole at 0 miles an hour, California. Never forget. Seriously, never forget. Now, let's go to there's also been talk that there's going to be a competition caution. That makes sense considering how these guys really aren't going to have any practice time. There's going to be no practice, no qualifying, but they will have competition cautions. I feel like that's basically pretty self-explanatory. They're going to have competition cautions at certain laps to make sure that tire wear is good, basically. I mean, it's a competition caution. There's not much to say.
One competition caution at lap 30. Only thing of note is they are pausing the field. Nobody's advancing positions during these pit stops. That's so long as they beat the pace car out. So you can make any adjustments. You can raise and lower the track bar or put a spring rubber in, do whatever you need to do to make sure that car is ready to go for the rest of the race. Just do not fall behind the pace car.
Fantastic. So we've gotten the formalities of NASCAR's return out of the way. So what do you say, fellas? We've been waiting a long time to make some picks again for some real, actual racing. Gentlemen, real racing is back this weekend. Let's make some picks. Let's do it. So we will start with Sunday's NASCAR Cup Series Real Heroes 400 at Darlington Raceway, Sunday, May 17th. It'll be the first race back for NASCAR in general since March the 39th. I'm kidding. March the 8th, if I remember correctly, was the last time a NASCAR race was held, the Cup race at Phoenix. But let's see. I mean, I guess let's just go with this. We have a good grasp of what drivers are good at Darlington. So I'm going to start with Justin Palmer. Who will win Sunday's 400-mile event at Darlington?
I think I'm going to go with a guy who would surprise you. I think I'm going to go with Chase Elliott. I think NASCAR always seems to have the popular win and when they need it most. I've been 50-50 on this all week, wondering if this is going to be NASCAR's perfect storm. But in order to have a perfect storm weekend, and you need to have the right driver win. And so give me Chase Elliott. He's been strong all year. He's had the best driver average. I mean, the driver or loop data. He's had the best of that all season long. And give me the 9.
Fantastic. So Justin Palmer chooses Chase Elliott to win Sunday's NASCAR return at the Darlington Raceway. In fact, now I've got the starting lineup here. He will start 11th on Sunday afternoon. Hal Estep, your pick for Sunday's Real Heroes 400.
Unfortunately, this isn't like iRacing where I can just pick William Byron and be confident that I'm going to get it right. Looking at the starting grid, I think I'm going to go with a pick out of left field. Oh, man, just looking at DiBenedetto at the 3 makes me want to pick him, but I just can't do it. I got to go with if we're having a return, and we're having another return of Matt Kenseth getting back in the car. I think him in the 42 gets it done.
Wow. Matt Kenseth right off the bat. He's going to start right behind Chase Elliott in 12th in the new, at least the newly designed Credit One Bank Chevrolet. They changed the paint scheme from Kyle Larson's previous paint scheme. But Matt Kenseth, his return to NASCAR competition, his first race since 2018. So we've got one Chase Elliott, we've got one Matt Kenseth. Now it's my turn. For my pick, as I look at the entry list, I'm trying to remember. Eric Jones won the Southern 500 last year. And to his credit, that was a brilliant drive for him. That said, though, I don't think Eric Jones is going to get it done. I mean, he's back in 20th. He'll probably stay in 20th to start on pole on Wednesday. So my pick, I'm just going to go with someone who I know has been successful at Darlington before, and I'm going to take this year's Daytona 500 winner, Denny Hamlin. He's won the Southern 500 before. I mean, he won it in 2010, and he won it again in 2017, I want to say. Either 17 or 18. I forget what year it was specifically. But, it was 17. It was 17. I remember now. But Denny Hamlin, I'm confident he can get it done. I think Denny Hamlin gets it done on Sunday. So, again, our picks, Justin Palmer picked Chase Elliott, Hal Eastep picks Matt Kenseth, and I, Sterling Siemens, am picking Denny Hamlin. Ironic, 10, 11, and 12. So should be interesting to see what happens during the race. I'm going to try to find the entry list for the next race. It is the 200-mile event for the Xfinity Series that will happen Tuesday night at Darlington Raceway. Let's have a look at the entry list.
Don't think there is one for this one.
Actually, yeah, I'm looking. There is no entry list here. So, tell you what, let me look at the Xfinity Series driver points up to this point of the season. And I'll go ahead and share the screen.
The same words.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share the screen, and you guys can make your picks from there. So here are the Xfinity Series points through the first 4 races that have been run. Harrison Burton leads the standings. Chase Briscoe in second. Then there's Austin Cindric, Brandon Jones, Ross Chastain, Noah Gragson, Ryan Sieg, Justin Haley, Justin Allgaier, and Michael Annett. So that is the top 10 with Riley Herbst in 11th. Justin, I'm going to take your pick again. First on this, who do you think has the best chance of winning 200 miles at Darlington?
At first, the name that it came to me was Chase Briscoe, but then in the back of my head, and the voice was screaming, Toyota, Toyota, Toyota. Toyota at Darlington is just a beast to be reckoned with, and I just cannot pick anyone outside of a Toyota. So the one guy who I think can win in a Toyota is Harrison Burton. Burton picks up win number 2. Oh, and Joe Gibbs Racing has another win at the Darlington and Raceway.
All right. So we have Harrison Burton, the pick for Justin Palmer. Hal Eastep, your pick for Darlington in the Xfinity Series.
I think I'm going to go with the wily veteran Justin Allgaier to win at Darlington. He hasn't won there before, which most would say means that history says he won't win, but I say that just means he's due.
All right. So 1 for Harrison Burton, 1 for Justin Allgaier. For me, if I have to pick anyone, it's tough to say. I still can't believe Brandon Jones won a race.
Oh,
He won at Phoenix. But, I mean, hey, to his credit, as much flack as we've given him, or I've given him, he's actually done pretty well this season. And you know what? With all of this stuff going on, it's just been pure insanity. We might as well just embrace the chaos. So I'm going to embrace the chaos, and I'm going to say Brandon Jones is going to win another race. Brandon Jones is going to win Darlington.
Brandon Jones to the 59 next year. Who would have guessed?
Oh, man. Okay, so again, our picks in respective order. Justin picks Harrison Burton. Hal takes Justin Allgaier, and I am taking Brandon Jones. Should be one interesting race. Now, back to the Cup race, because there will be another event held on Wednesday night. It'll be a 400-mile event, or not 400 miles, a 500-kilometer event, which I'm going to do the math real quick on that and see how long Darlington is in terms of kilometers. But Justin Palmer, I'll just go ahead and ask for your pick on
310.68.
Thank you on that. So Darlington Raceway, Wednesday night showdown. Who wins it?
This driver has not gotten off to a fast start. This driver has not been on top of his game, thanks to a crew chief swap earlier in the season. And I feel like this driver is due for a win this season. And it's almost hard to think that he doesn't have a win by now. Give me Martin Truex Jr. For Darlington. And I cannot pick 2 races at Darlington without a Toyota winning at least one.
All right. So Justin is expecting perennial stage winner MTJ to take Wednesday night's Darlington 500-kilometer, which I just did the math because I found out Darlington is 2.198 kilometers. That adds up to about 227 laps. So they'll probably go 228 on Wednesday night. Hal, your pick for Wednesday night's Darlington showdown, who takes it?
You know, it has been 6 years since a Chevrolet has won a Cup race at Darlington. Now, I'm going against all logic in saying that 2 Chevrolets will win the next 2 races at Darlington because I'm going to say that the 3-time Darlington winner, Jimmy Johnson, will win the second race.
Wouldn't that be something?
Okay, I'll admit that's heavily exaggerated. But I mean, hey, Jimmy Johnson winning Darlington, that'd be something real special. For sure, considering that it sounds like he's still going to be retiring this year regardless of how the schedule turns out, which is a little unfortunate. But
one of the things we did not put on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it is what it is. So, okay, for my final pick, I already picked Denny Hamlin winning the first race. And as I look at the schedule here, I'm not going to pick Clint Boyer because he'll still think it's iRacing.
Can't rage quit if you get wrecked by him.
Let's see. I feel like, well, this is a tough one, admittedly. But I think I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick. You know, he's done really well at Darlington in the past. In fact, he's won the Southern 500 there in 2014. He came close to winning it again in 2016. He probably should have won it. Had his pit crew not given it away again. But, you know.
Where have I heard that story before?
But, you know, Kevin Harvick, he's consistent. He's really consistent. And he'll pull out some wins even when you don't expect him to. So that's my pick. Kevin Harvick wins the Wednesday night showdown. Again, our picks in respective order. Justin takes Martin Truex Jr., Hal with Jimmy Johnson, and myself with Kevin Harvick. 3 race picks, 3 races that will be happening over the next 7 days, really. Well, not even 7 days. 3 races in 4 days at one track for Darlington. So that basically is going to do it for our show. Hal, Justin, any last thoughts before we go off air?
Gotta congratulate the seniors first. It's on graduating. So once again, congrats to all the guys and gals at KCOU for graduating. You guys are going to be doing amazing things out in the real world.
Absolutely. Hal, anything else to say?
Well, I can only echo Justin's sentiment right there. I mean, these seniors taught us as a whole a lot of things that we did not know coming into the station, and we will be forever grateful for that.
Absolutely. Just being there. For Hal and I, we've just completed our second school year at KCOU. And Justin, you completed your first. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It's been one heck of a ride, especially this semester. And for us to start the show in the format we were expecting, in a radio format, and then to convert it to this in a Zoom style, it's definitely not what I had in mind at the start of the semester, but I'm glad that we're still able to do this in some way, shape, or form. We hope to be back in the studio space in Columbia at some point in the future. Fingers crossed that happens, but hopefully it'll happen sooner rather than later. And while we're on the subject of seniors, it is graduation weekend at Mizzou, hence why I have the Mizzou virtual backdrop behind me. And I do want to recognize, first I want to congratulate all of the seniors throughout the University of Missouri system for their graduation this weekend. It has not been an easy semester. I think we all can echo on that. But for the seniors who have made it, who have been troopers through all of this, we all salute you. Congratulations on making it this far. And I do want to recognize the seniors from the KCOU sports staff. They are Connor McCann, James Stanley, Lauren Rosenberg, Ben Krakow, Chase Phillips, who served as our assistant sports director, and as always, this past year's sports director, Garrett Jones. And I also want to recognize our KCOU station general manager from this last year, Miss Claire Weingarner, who is also graduating this semester. All of you and all of the seniors around KCOU that I unfortunately have not listed here, which if I haven't listed you, I'm terribly sorry. But all of the seniors at KCOU, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for your contributions to the station and for helping us become better at what we do, of hosting radio shows and, in this case, Zoom shows that will go online in the near future. So thanks to you for what you've done, and best of luck to all of you in your future endeavors. And I also want to recognize our incoming staff members, particularly our new GM and our new sports director. I'd like to send best well wishes to our new general manager, Sean Day, and the new KCOU sports director, Nash Walker. I think it's safe to say that the station is in great hands with both of them at the helm, and we're really expecting a lot of great things out of their tenures in the future. Best of luck to them over this next calendar year. So, with all of that being said, congrats to our seniors. We made it. We made it through the semester. Burnin' Rubber, the socially distanced edition, will be back next week, same time, same place. On behalf of Justin Palmer and Hal Eastep, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and be kind to one another. Until next time, this is Sterling Siemens signing off.